Oh, you want to play some D&D? Awesome. You've played before, right? No problem. Here, take this, read up, make a character, and then you can join my group next week. We're starting at level 3. Go ahead and use the point buy system in the book. Unless you want to wait until we roll stats at the table. Oh, and you're going to need dice and... Welcome to Geek Philosophy, where we explore our love of geeky wisdom. We release new videos weekly, so please consider subscribing and turning on the notifications so you don't miss out on any of our content. That introduction that we had could be great for some, but probably overwhelming to a majority of new players. And we want people to get excited, but we don't want to throw everything at them all at once. A big thank you for my stepson Ethan for stepping into the role of new player. Even though he's not really a new player, he's actually played before, and stay tuned, he will hopefully appear in a future Youth D&D live stream here on the channel. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to give you a few of my own tips to introduce a brand new player to the hobby, and when I mean brand new, I mean somebody with very little to no gaming experience of any kind. That's so you can start from the basics and adjust as you need for other people that have more experience with gaming. I think it's important to start with the basics, explaining what a tabletop role-playing game is. I'm going to give an overview of RPGs that you could leverage to help explain things to your players. In short, a role-playing game is a game in which the players assume the role of a character and act out their character's choices during the game. There are a ton of varieties of RPGs. There's live-action role-playing, otherwise known as LARP, where players actually play out their characters in real life, in real-world environments, dressing up as their characters and using safety weapons like safety swords and bows and cool special effects. And it's a really good way to roleplay, but it's not D&D. There are also massively multiplayer online, or MMO, role-playing games like World of Warcraft. This is where players use an avatar character that explores the fantasy world and interacts with other players and non-player characters. Again, this is another cool way to roleplay, also not D&D. Then there are tabletop RPGs. Tabletop is really where it all started, and yes, this is the type that is D&D. All you really need are some pencils and paper, a set of dice, and a rule set, and your imagination. But these days, tabletop RPGs like D&D take advantage of modern devices like laptops and iPads and your phone and even applications like D&D Beyond. But the main thing to convey to your new player is that D&D may have similarity to all those other games, but that's because it's the game by which all of the others took their inspiration. In D&D, there is a Dungeon Master, or DM, who is sort of the lead narrator of the story and referee of the rules. The rest of the people are the players. They engage in the game by making decisions about what their characters say and do, or attempt to do. Really, in its simplest form, D&D is make-believe, with some dice, and a little bit of math. Now that we've had a chance to explain a little bit about what D&D is, it's time to explain its major components. It's been said that there are 3 pillars of adventure in D&D. And the first pillar of adventure in D&D is exploration. The player's handbook defines it as both the adventurer's movement through the world and their interaction with objects and situations that require their attention. And while that's true, it's also open to the widest interpretation of all of the 3 pillars. You may be asking, does this include like following tracks in the woods to find the bad guys? Yes, totally includes that. Okay, but what about searching the room for secret doors or traps or, an assassin in the corner? Yep, that too. And what about traveling across the desert to another town? Yeah, that's exploration too, as long as you're interacting with things along the way. Exploration can be seen as the catch-all category for all the things in the game that aren't specifically contained in the other pillars. Social interaction is the next pillar of adventure. This is a little easier to define since it occurs anytime the players talk with a non-player character, or if they talk with anything else for that matter. So if we're negotiating prices with a shopkeeper, yep, social interaction. Okay, but what about if we're talking to the bad guys, but we know we're gonna probably end up fighting them? Yeah, still social interaction. Okay, but what if we're scared out of our mind because we just stepped into the dragon's lair and we try to talk our way out of it? Kind of like Bilbo in The Hobbit. Yeah, social interaction. In my opinion, social interaction can be one of the most rewarding parts of D&D because it often creates the best opportunity for role-playing, and I spell that with an L-E, not with the two L's. Okay, let's armor up and move on to the final pillar. Combat is arguably the part of the game most players are excited about. In my opinion, it's the easiest pillar to conceptually explain to a new player, but it's also the one with the most structured rules. I mean, think about it. There are hit points and armor class and attack rolls and saving throws and special effects and conditions, not to mention that the order in which the players take their turn will change every encounter. So it's the most exciting part for most people, but it's also the part that turns them off if it seems too complicated. We want to have players immersed in the story, having fun playing their characters, and attempting to do all of the cool stuff they imagine. I believe it's also important to explain what the three pillars of D&D adventure are, but not overwhelm them with the rules that go along with each right from the start. Let me give you my take on the rules. Don't worry about the rules. As a DM, the best thing you can do to bring a new player into the game is not overwhelm them with rules. But it's also important to remember that there are a wide variety of personality types, so there will be players that, even though they're brand new, they will go out and buy a player's handbook right away. Or they'll sign up for a D&D Beyond account and they'll read everything and they'll consume it. And that is awesome. And it's great that they're ready to jump in. And others may not think much about it until right before the game. I mean, they may say, yeah, I want to play, and then just show up. That's no problem either. As a DM, you can use your session 0 to help players at both ends of that spectrum. So I have 3 things that I want players to focus on. Just 3. First, I want all of them to understand this basic table rule. Have fun and be respectful of everybody at the table. The second thing they need to understand is being engaged with the game as much as possible is a way for everyone to have fun. Even if they're shy a little bit, just to try to interact as much as they can with the game and everyone playing. Lastly, I want them to learn this basic game mechanic. Just this. Listen to what's going on, explain what you like to do. Sometimes I'll ask you to roll a d20 and add something, and then I'll narrate the results. I don't want them to worry about what they have to add to the roll. It's my job as the DM to figure out what they'll need to add to that roll while they're learning the process. For example, I'll ask them to do things like roll a d20 and add your perception modifier. First, having explained what a d20 is, by the way. Or roll a d20 and add your spell attack modifier. And then I'll even tell them where to look on their character sheet or in D&D Beyond or whatever app they're using to get that information. And as time goes on, they'll start picking it up on their own. And if they can do these 3 things, have fun and be respectful, stay engaged with the game, and learn the basic game mechanic, the game is going to be great. I'll also explain that for anything else that comes up, I'll prompt them as we go. They don't have to remember everything, I'll remind them, and they will start to remember the rules as they go. I'll explain that over time I want them to try to remember something new about the rules each time we play, but don't feel pressured to memorize everything. So, for example, if they're playing a wizard, they should try to know more about playing their wizard as they progress. But they shouldn't expect to know what the druid's wild shape is. It's not really important for their character to know that. If things go well, using this format allows the player to learn about their character and the rules around that character. I'll also provide the players with a version of the What Can I Do on My Turn cards that were included in the D&D Essentials kit. Okay, this can be a highly debated topic amongst the experienced DMs. Should you start off a player with a pre-generated character or let them roll up one on their own? There really is no one right answer to this. In fact, Wizards of the Coast even provides both options. The D&D starter set includes several pre-generated characters that go along with the adventure module that's in it, the Lost Mines of Phandelver. But the D&D Essentials kit that I mentioned earlier, it provides you with the basic character creation rules. So even the publishers of D&D provide both options. But let's review some of the benefits of either of those choices. Okay, so what's good about using a pre-generated character? It's faster, and it's easier to jump right in. They may not know if they are in for the long haul, so this gives them a taste of what the game is like with a character that they didn't make. So there's no need to go through an in-depth character creation process, and it minimizes the amount of rules that a new player has contact with right from the start. However, the opposite is true of the character creation process. They can fully realize the character that they're thinking of, the one that they have in mind, and the rules important to that character's race and background and class can all be introduced during character creation, and that means their connection to the game and the party is kind of embedded from the start. Since I've only covered the benefits, you might be able to tell I like both of these methods, so I take a hybrid approach because I think it's the best of both worlds. So in this hybrid approach, once you've had a session 0 and you've figured out what type of character the new player would like to have, you can hold a one-on-one or even just sort of a small mini-group scenario with a pre-gen for that person to test out. This allows the player to get a feel for what the mechanics are, and it's sort of a throwaway character, although if they like that character, they can rename it, reskin it, and continue playing it and keep it forever if they want. But it's important to note that this hybrid approach is usually best when you know you're going to have a multi-session campaign. To be honest, if it's a one-shot and you're just going to have this one story, you can kind of go either way, but I would lean towards the pre-gen approach with a new player just to keep it simple. And I would go the other route if it was campaign, because there's just nothing like rolling up your first character and you want it to be memorable as you start a campaign. Sometimes a new player enters the group because they're friends with one of the other people at the table, which is great. If that person is an experienced player, even better, because it offers a great opportunity for them to step up as sort of a mentor player. In my experience, most friendly players are very open to doing this, and they should never be put on the spot or forced to do this, but if they offer, it's a great way to help new people start to pick up their D&D journey. But there are a couple of boundaries within this. The new player should never feel like the mentor is playing their character for them. I mean, if they feel as if they're making all the choices and have all the control, it's no fun. They should never feel as if the mentor is taking over. But it should also never be a burden for the mentor either. They aren't a second DM, they're just providing a little guidance and helping a friend along the way. As a side note, there can even be a role-playing advantage to this. You could think about, what's my background of both of those characters? And maybe they're siblings, or old childhood friends, or they served in the same army. Whatever works for the campaign. It shouldn't be a relationship of power imbalance, but it could be a close relationship that helps associate the characters working together and the players. So this could bring things right together full circle, sort of in the real world and in the story world. To see how I put all this into practice, you may want to check out our live stream campaign that will be starting very soon, or has already started if you're watching this in the future of some kind. I don't know, timey-wimey, you get it. And while this is very much a regular D&D campaign for my players, I'm considering it a teaching campaign for the Geek Philosophy viewers. So this will give me a chance to point out any teachable moments. I'm going to have a behind the screens video that accompanies each one of our sessions to sort of explain how I prepped, what happened, and how things turned out, and how I changed things on the fly, because nothing ever goes to plan. Thanks for sticking with me while I contemplated how to introduce a new player to D&D. In the end, it's one of the most rewarding things a DM can do. For this week's bit of Geek Philosophy, I turned to a character realization from Marisha Ray, from Campaign 2 of Critical Role, where she's playing Beauregard. I think I can punch ghosts now.